Well, welcome, Jason. Jason Fox. Welcome to the Mokuchi Studio podcast. Very excited to have you here today.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Today, you're joining us from
Uh,
Missouri.
yes, just 2 hours south of St. Louis, where I'm working on a project that's been about 2 years in the making.
Oh my goodness! Wow! And you are the owner of Never Stop Building.
Yeah, Never Stop Building is my company where I focus on Japanese woodwork, carpentry, timber framing, and similar types of woodwork. It's kind of been a continuous evolution of the different businesses and careers that I've had. So the name is pretty general. And for several years now, it's been focused on carpentry.
Oh, interesting. And what was it focused on first? Was there one focus before, or several, or?
Yeah, when I kind of left the 9 to 5 world and I was kind of bumming around and doing software consulting, I thought, oh, I'll call this company Never Stop Building. I have a tattoo from when I was building motorcycles in my 20s that says Never Stop Building, and it's got wrenches and things on it. And saying, oh, that's kind of like um, my ethos, philosophy. That's who I am. I just build stuff. I love building stuff. I've been building stuff since I was a kid. Why not call the company that? It's kind of the tagline and the company all at once. Um, so yeah, I mean, it started out as software consulting and then hardware prototyping and electronics, and then it morphed to furniture and carpentry. And I debated calling the carpentry company something different, but yeah, that brand already existed and people thought it was cool, and uh, and so it's a little strange to try to tell people your company name. A lot of places are called XYZ Timberworks or whatever, but um, I like it. People seem to like it.
Yeah, seems to suit you well. We've known each other for some years, and it seems to capture a lot about you. Yeah, and so does your logo. Um, Not the tattoo, which is the tattoo's really cool, but the logo you've incorporated, I believe at the time you were making the transition to focusing on woodworking. Is that correct? The logo of the
Yes,
Bristol cone?
bristlecone.
Bristle cone, pine cone, which is stylized, right? Stylized version of the cone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I. So let's see. So yeah, for the longest time, the sort of company branding was just the banner from this tattoo, and it seemed less and less related to the woodworking I was doing. And I did a road trip through forests on the West Coast after I got married, and hiking in, I guess it was Nevada, or there's two main areas of the bristlecone. It might have been the California one or it might have been the Nevada one, but there's a grove um, where the oldest tree on Earth is. It's a secret. I may have seen it. I may have touched it, but they keep it a secret so nobody cuts it down. They took a core sample to determine that these trees are older than civilization. I mean, 5,000 years old. And they have these tiny little pine cones. Yeah, and it's the park, so you're not supposed to take anything. And I didn't take anything, but the cones are all over the ground, so I could have easily took one, but I picked one up and looked at it and took some pictures, and it was such a powerful experience being among these trees. And it's at the top of a mountain. I mean, it's not easy to get to this grove, so you really got to haul your way up there. And there's these just gnarled they look like stone. I mean, it's incredible. There's a picture on my website. It's just incredible. And then that stuck in my head, and I kind of took the way the pine cone looks and kind of made it a little stylized and made it a little simplified for the logo, so that I could use it in different materials or whatever. But I mean, right, like never stop building. Those trees are doing the same thing.
Yeah. 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 5,000 years of keep growing,
It's so
keep
crazy.
building a tree. Yeah. Yeah. And was it conscious, the this stylizing the pine cone, when you shifted to woodworking, I should say, when you shifted to woodworking, um, were the Japanese tools an influence from the start, or did you start shifting to woodworking and the Japanese tools and aesthetic came after? And the reason I'm asking is that when I only look at your logo, um, it it fits so well within the Japanese traditional aesthetic of stylizing a form so that
Mm,
it's instantly recognizable, but it's not visually accurate, but it
mm,
has the essence of whatever it's representing. And so before asking, I had assumed like, oh wow, this cone, the looks of it fits so well in the Japanese aesthetic. Um, there must be a connection there. Um,
it it may have been some influence, looking at sort of the different Japanese motifs and patterns to kind of, but I don't entirely remember when I made it to switch over. I know it was 2017 ish, which was I was well into woodworking at that point. Um, so I already at that point had known that I was into the some of the Japanese traditions and the tools and stuff like that. Um, and I've been into Japanese culture forever. I don't know why exactly from a kid. I mean, it's so strange to kind of try to work backwards and think about it. Other than like, I mean, I did what every kind of young kid in the '90s was doing. Watching cartoons and anime and playing video games and talking with my friends about, and it kind of, I don't know where the influences came from, but Japanese culture was always like in my head somewhere. And I knew of the tools and I knew of a lot of the different, um, I don't know, they have like a bit of excellence in a lot of different fields. So it kind of was in the back of my mind when I got into woodworking. I definitely ordered some tools like really early on before I knew what I was doing. I mean, I still don't know if I know what I'm doing, but
ordered what, Japanese tools, or ordered?
yeah, I
Oh,
think gosh, I don't even know if I might still have the first chisel. Like I guess it would be Japan Woodworking, which is Woodcraft's kind of offshoot. They had a catalog, and I was like always looking at, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, oh, I'd watch the videos on the internet of like some of the crafts, and it was it was always kind of in my mind somehow, because I do remember when I was working on a big consulting project and I was getting kind of burned out and I was on the computer all the time. That's kind of where I sort of started on the path in earnest, because it got into my head that I wanted to do a timber framing workshop, and I was comparing the different ones that were available. I was just searching around the internet, and I found EcoNest, which um, and I was looking at the tool list, and it had this Japanese chisel, like a 1-inch tataki, uh, And I was like, this is this.
Tataki being a timber framing chisel.
Yeah, yeah. It was. Did he actually have a specific one to get? I don't know, but it. I still have it. It's a Masashige Tataki no Mi. It's. I've since ground it to be. Well, that's a whole separate discussion. Um, but I remember seeing that in the list and being like, okay, this is the one I'm going to do because this is, timber framing and they got Japanese tools in the tool list. So like, I bet this is like exactly what I was looking for. And the kind of the rest is history. Like I went up to Canada, did this timber framing workshop with Robert Laporte, who runs EcoNest. It was like a whirlwind. Uh, it kind of showed me a whole new way of being and existing in the world as a woodworker, as someone who builds stuff, but like outside with your hands directly with the material. Um, if anybody listening has met Robert, he is a force of nature. I mean, he's like I don't know, he's like a guru of timber framing. And I was just totally vibing with what he was talking about, and that's definitely where I sort of took a hard exit from the path I was on. And I still was doing the consulting work and finishing projects, but it started to veer towards woodworking more and more and more. And additional workshops with him led to other opportunities to do commissions, and he put me in touch with you. And that's when I took some of your classes in New York and attended the Kez festival you have out there. Um, and yeah, that's where really where it all happened.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Of all times, I now live in the same small town in Oregon as Robert does,
Yeah.
and I was visiting with him just yesterday.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
how is he?
and he's well. He's very well, and every day more of an inspiration. I think I had the good fortune way back when he lived in Iowa to take class with him. So it is interesting that so many years later, this
Mm,
was 30 30 years ago, um,
wow.
and that so many years later, you would take a workshop with him in Canada. He's from Canada. I'm from
Yeah.
Canada. Um, and he would then put you in touch with me, whom by then I was teaching. I had spent a few
Hmm.
decades studying, and then I was teaching. Um, so it's just so many connections. So very interesting. Uh,
Yeah, I really like that. I don't know. I have a guy that sort of helps me out that I'm sort of teaching him what I know. I guess you could call apprentice, but I don't know how I feel about the term at the moment. Uh, but I tell him like there's like a lineage. It's not all that different from traditional times because all the people that I kind of have known and learned from, right? Like Robert learned some stuff from Dale, and you apprentice with Dale, and Jim and Dale, didn't they work with what was his name?
well, so Dale Brotherton of the Takumi Company in Seattle, Washington, whom I apprenticed with
Mm,
for 9 years,
mm,
his teacher was Makoto Imai, who taught had many, many apprentices. I don't think anybody apprenticed as long as my teacher did with him, but he inspired masses. Uh, and Jim Blauville, who's a woodworker and blacksmith living in Taftville, Connecticut, also spent some time working, studying with him. I don't know that he was formally an apprentice, but he did work for on some projects with Makoto, and learn like so many have. And then you ended up spending some time with Jim.
Uh, a little bit. I visited his house and we worked on a couple of random things together. And I kind of try to see him whenever I'm out there because my wife uh, is from Connecticut, so sometimes when we're up for the holidays and it gets a little long, I'm like, "Hey Jim, can I just like come out? I'll do whatever." Um, and yeah, he's great. I remember meeting him at one of your Kez events, and I was like, "This guy is awesome." Yeah, I mean, I love that. I love that I'm part of like this thing that kind of goes all the way back to Japan. Like that's part of what's interesting about beyond the craft aspect of it. There's a lot of you have to subscribe to like forms and ways of working and ways of learning and also as ways of teaching. And it's cool that like all of this, all of the people that I kind of know and have learned from sort of go back to Makoto-san. And it's just, I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, in the U.S. Yeah, many people, many lineage. Yeah, trace back to Makoto. Yeah, yeah, yeah. As I said before, he inspired. Yeah, so many people. Yeah, I am thankful to him for my teacher. For sure,
Right.
for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's yeah. I'm not gonna talk about me. um, okay, so was picking up the first few Japanese tools sort of your entry into a more Japanese woodworking path, or did it all it knowing Robert Laporte, and how he has a blend
Mm,
of Western timber framing and Japanese timber framing in what he teaches and builds, and he has very deep roots in the natural world. He started
mm,
his career in forestry up in Canada, and it's later on that he started building log homes, and then later on timber framing. And from really early, he had a wish to know more about and study, Japanese woodworking, reading about how they make temples,
mm.
and that really, struck a chord for him. Um, and then years and years later, he invited my teacher to teach Japanese timber framing at EcoNest. And yeah, they did that for almost 10 years, once or twice a year.
Yeah, that was part of that road trip. That big road trip was kind of like it was a kind of a necessary turning point. It was like I had just gotten married. We were doing sort of a road trip honeymoon. I was going to drive through northern Canada and see trees and see woods, and then we met up in Ashland, sort of at the tail end of Dale's joinery workshop at Robert's place, um, which was awesome. And we built a gate, and it's crazy thinking back. I mean, like I love how it's like I always feel barely capable of doing anything, And then I look back and I'm like, oh wow, I really didn't know what I was doing then. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know if it's like attempting to be humble, but I mean, you don't really know how far you've come sometimes until you kind of look in the rearview mirror. Um, but yeah, that was a great workshop, and it was helpful making a connection with Dale, um, for when I ended up trying to get my visa to go to Japan and study there. He wrote me like a recommendation letter kind of thing.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful. Wonderful. Because, so yeah, you did meet some carpenters, I believe. Did you meet them at New York has 2018? John and Koei?
yes,
Yeah. John
yeah,
Stolenmeyer and Koei Yamamoto.
yeah. So that was, I think I had finished up work on a, well, timeline wise, anyway, maybe this is where you should, you should edit out the pause. But yeah, so I, as I was getting more into the craft, I remember, I had always like, oh, I got to go to Japan. I got to go to Japan. I love all this stuff about Japan. I got to see Japan. And I was like, well, why don't I just do this? Like, why? What am I waiting for? I had some money from these consulting projects. I just was like, okay, I'm going to Japan, and I booked I booked like a 6 week flight. I found like a workaway at like this weird little Zen center run by a German lady that was a monk. And I was like, okay, I'll do 3 weeks there because she needs like woodworking help, and I want to learn whatever. And and then I'll do another 3 weeks with the rail pass and go all over Japan and see tools. And it was kind of like my own little pilgrimage, trying to figure out the country. And I emailed people, and I think I met, what is it? What is his name? He's a really well renowned saw maker.
Oh, in Japan. Wh-
Yeah,
what a young guy.
yeah. He,
Mi-
the
Mitsukawa.
yeah, Mitsukawa-san.
Hmm.
Like I had emailed somebody that put me in touch with the people that I guess supply his stuff, and we did a little tour, and it was very like DIY. Like I like really didn't know enough connections. Jim put me in touch with somebody that he bought tools from. That it was a very like, I just was kind of going there doing my own thing, and it was a blast. Um, so anyway, I come back that summer steeped, in Japanese culture. Everything was amazing. I was just head over heels. I was like, this is the best. It's everything I could have imagined. Um, yeah, I toured all these temples and saw it's anyway. Um, so then I go to your New York Kez 2018, and John Yamasan, uh, we called him Yamasan. Um, Yamamoto Kohei is his name. They were there doing demonstrations and visiting and talking about their work, and I think they had put out a sign up sheet that was like, hey, if anybody's interested in like, coming out and checking out our place or maybe working together, put your name down. I was like, immediately. And then I remember just picking John Stolemeyer's brain at the bar after the event, telling, he was like, oh, you just were in Japan, like, and I was so excited. And uh we had, after a couple beers, it was like easy for me to be like, yeah, I would totally come out there and apprentice. Like, there's no question. Are you serious? Because I'm serious. And And I don't know if they really thought I was as serious, because I guess my personality is kind of like, if we're doing this, let's do it. Like there's no, like I don't say things for throwaway purposes. If someone's like, "Yeah, we should have dinner sometime," I'll be like, "Yeah, okay, when?" Like, let's put it on the calendar. Done. Like, what otherwise what are we talking about? And they're like, "Oh, you guys want to come to Japan? All right, let's do it." And I had moved out to Colorado sort of after that to work on a big contracting hot tub project at my friend's house. That's a whole other story. But over those intervening months, I was working on the visa and emailing them, and we were kind of figuring out how this would work. Um, because for a long-term stay in Japan, you can't just it's very hard to get a visa to Japan. You have to, um, if it's a work visa, you basically have to prove that there's nobody in Japan that has the skills that you're bringing to Japan. So that work visa was out, and then I ended up getting a cultural activities visa, which is such a cool idea. It's like, the Japanese government wants to spread the culture of Japan, and so like, it was quote unquote unpaid. We got a little bit of money under the table, um, which I immediately spent on food and tools. I mean, it was like a very classic uh, experience, but I'm getting a little bit ahead. Got the visa, worked out, and then when I finished that project, there was a week or two of downtime, but I basically just moved back to Baltimore where we had our house. We had rented out our house, and then Lauren, my wife, was staying with friends for several months, and then she ended up coming out too, just on like a tourist, like a multi-month tourist visa, or like a spousal visa. Anyway, I forget at this point, but yeah. So I went out there and I apprenticed with John and Yamasan, and it was crazy. It was like it was everything that I thought I would get into. They're wonderful, kind people, and generous and good teachers. And it was very helpful that Yamasan speaks very good English, and obviously John is from Ohio, so like there was no language barrier issue. Um, but I mean, it was a wonderful experience, and I learned so much, and so humbling. I mean, at the time, I felt like I kind of knew some things. I had clients paid me for work. I sort of had a business going in woodworking, but I was like immediately the lowest man on the totem pole. Like unquestionably, like the best carpenters in America are like barely functional carpenters in Japan. There's just so many levels higher of skill out there. Um, and then they talk about the same thing. So Yamasan would talk about guys he met at these woodworking meetups, or when I think Yamasan like got to the podium at the Kazurokai out there. I mean, he was good, but he talks about other guys that like, oh yeah, I'm like they're so much better. I mean, so it's just incredible. Like it was like a skill accelerator. Like a year in Japan, it was actually closer to like 9.5 months or something, because COVID happened at the end of it and we had to go back. Um, yeah, like 9 months in Japan is like 36 months in America. It's intense. So that's how I did the Japanese apprenticeship thing.
Mhm. Yeah, and then you came back, and a daughter was born.
Yeah, that was part of the we got pregnant in Japan and had a first couple appointments, and I think we were thinking like, yeah, we could probably have this baby like at the end. And then,
At the end, meaning
uh,
in Japan, or
yeah,
yeah.
potentially, like, or we didn't really think that far ahead. And and I remember we were taking a vacation to Indonesia because we were close to there. It was cheaper, you know, so cheap to go to Indonesia when you're in Japan versus anywhere else. And it was like the baby moon. Lauren always wanted to go to Bali, and it was like this whole thing. But it's so funny because every time we take a nice vacation, she always ends up being sick for one reason or another, and she always holds that over my head. But I digress. Because she was like in morning sickness in Bali,
Oh,
but we're like traveling through Taiwan, and we're like, why is everybody wearing masks? Like, this is January of 2020. Like,
oh
what's
gosh.
going on? And it was like, and then like my diving buddy was from Italy, and she's like, I might have to go back to Italy. Something's not right. It was just very weird. And it was, you know, in retrospect, when we were in Taiwan, we should have been like, all right, pull all the money out of the retirement account. Short, you know, it's like you could just see it. You saw this wave coming before anybody else. It was the craziest thing because we got back to Japan, and then but you know, the whole COVID thing started rolling, and after a month or two, it was all over the place, and we were getting emails from the State Department like, you know, all the flights are being canceled. If you don't come back to America, who knows how long you're going to be in Japan. And Lauren being pregnant and it being a little up in the air, we decided, okay, we'll go back. Like, we'll move back to where we were living with my friends in Colorado, kind of hunker down there and figure this out. Because when it started, I mean, people were like, this is like the end of the world. Like, it was like apocalyptic. Uh, but it kind of turned a little less chaotic and consequential, and it ended up us just kind of living with our good friends, you know, baking bread and drinking wine all day. And I didn't have anything to do because I had all my tools were either in Baltimore or in boxes in Japan. And so I was just kind of goofing off and, you know, doing whatever out in Colorado until things started to become slightly normal again. And that's when I was like, well, I'll just start taking on work here and building up my business in Colorado, and we'll just try to save up for a house and see where this goes. And obviously we had our daughter then. Um,
And
yeah.
first name Aurora, is that correct?
Aurora.
Yes.
Aurora Sugi Fox.
Ah.
Middle name Sugi, after the Japanese cedar.
Mm.
Um, yeah, she's a sweet little dumpling. I actually delivered her. That's
Oh,
people listening.
okay.
That's an addition to what my skills. And the reason that
So,
happened,
so you being a, what is it? The DYI or okay.
yeah, like, well, I mean, that's people when people found out about it, they were like, yeah, of course he did.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Do it yourself. Yeah.
it was not intentional. It was like a weird circumstance of I don't think Lauren realized how far along she was in labor, and I was like, okay, let me go get the truck ready. I wonder how much this could get pretty graphic. I'll try to keep it PG. Uh, I was like trying to get the truck ready. We were like, we should probably go to the hospital if you're not feeling well. Uh, it became apparent that the baby was coming, and we were in this guest house, and I'm like on one phone with the doula, who's like what's a doula, like a midwife kind of
Oh,
helper.
I was told the doula is there to help the father.
Oh,
To hold the father's hand during. No,
we had the sweetest doula because it's Boulder, so it's like, if you know, that's a great place to have a kid. Everybody's it's a very nice place. The hospital is great. The doulas are great. It's like, she was so sweet. She gave all these tips. She did all this stuff with Lauren. Lauren was like ready to go. And I'm like, talking to her and with Lauren's phone, and I got my phone on the paramedics, and like it just becomes kind of like a fog at that point. But yeah, I mean, right there on the bathroom floor,
Oh my gosh.
was our little girl, and I remember my sister was over because I think she was in town because the due date was like around that time, and it had been kind of quiet for a while, and I texted my sister. I was like, "Oh, I just delivered a baby." Um, and then yeah,
What,
then the
your
paramedics
baby?
showed up. Yeah, it was crazy. It was so crazy. It was awesome. No,
Mm,
and it was one of those things where it's like I am so happy that experience happened. Wouldn't trade it for anything, and I wouldn't have been able to do it. You would never be able to plan for that. It's very very even if you had like a home birth or like a there's many ways to do it. My understanding is, but they usually don't like just let the dad do it. Not that I did anything. It was all my wife doing the work, but I like was comforting and I caught the child and kind of was available.
did the very
Uh,
few things that she can't quite do when she's
yeah.
delivering. Yes, of course.
Um, but yeah, I'm super glad I did. It was awesome,
Wow.
and
Wow,
I'm
wonderful.
curious to see how it manifests with Aurora's personality. She's already clearly my daughter because she's kind of a basket case.
um, in what way?
Well, she's just got a lot of energy and very curious. I mean, I guess I don't know. She's loud like I'm loud. I mean, yeah, when you see her with other toddlers, I mean, she's like, she's just like very forward, very headstrong. Um,
I look
just kind of like gregarious.
I look forward to my daughter Artemis meeting your daughter.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
Yes. Um, yeah. So that brings us to uh, your woodworking now, and so you're in Missouri. But once you're done with this project, you will be moving to Maine.
Yes. So I suppose you could talk about this whole period of my life as kind of like, I don't know, like the journeyman period or something. Probably ever since I left my office job, we've been all over the place. We traveled, we I pursued different things. I did the Japanese thing. We lived in Colorado. Um, and while I was in Colorado that second time after Japan, we knew, okay, let's, like we have a kid now. Let's kind of settle down. We knew we wanted a place for ourselves because we'd been living all over the place, kind of in not, like friends apartment or Japan or Argentina, or we kind of were all over the place. And I was fairly busy in Colorado because strangely everybody was stuck at home because of COVID, and so they wanted to fix all their houses. Everybody was like, let's do projects. So contractors in the Boulder area and generally were just gangbusters. And I just said yes to so many different projects. One of which is this big one in Missouri that we started planning in the fall of 2020. Um, and yeah, so we were living with our friends basically for free. We were, both of us were working, we were saving money. Interest rates were ridiculously low, like crazy low at the time because, everything was falling apart. Um, and prices were down. So it was like a good time to buy a house if you could. And my wife found this place in Maine, excuse me. It's an old 1870s farmhouse on a bunch of wooded acres, and it's like in rough shape, but it's like really weird. It's got a big timber frame carriage house, big granite foundation, weird like kitchen with a big beehive. They call it a beehive stove. It's like a big brick kind of
Hmm.
thing. I don't know what it's like a big brick stove that has a little bread oven and it's like a very weird place. Um, she said, I got a good feeling about this. And so we kind of queued up a list of places to see, and we flew out to Maine with Aurora, the whole family, toured a bunch of houses, saw the different neighborhoods, and then we saw this place, and I mean, I was just so excited because it's like I grew up in a farmhouse. Like my parents had got an ancient house, and they sort of tried to fix it up, and then that kind of disintegrated along with a whole bunch of other things. But coming to it as a carpenter and a woodworker and a builder and somebody who like sees everything I see is like I don't see the problems. None of the things that make people like, why would you buy this house? The plaster's falling down. It's ancient. It's, the windows are broken. All this, there's a million things that make this bad. All I see is like, well, this is a great deal on this awesome house. It's built with real materials. There's hewing marks in the carriage house. It's got real stone. It's just everything about it just seems so authentic and real, and it's got tons of woods. So like I can cut trees, build things on the property, and so I was totally sold. And we worked through a very long, painful process to get it because it was uh, it was inherited by the children of the previous owners, and there were 5 kids, and it was hard to get them to agree on stuff, and the house was in rough shape, so it was hard to get the loan, and it was hard to get the inspection, and da 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 da. There was a couple times where it's like, oh, this isn't gonna happen, this isn't gonna happen, but like perseverance, and we got it, and it's been vacant since the 2021, I think. I think we closed in 2021. I flew out there with my brother-in-law and good friend of mine to help monitor the septic system. The bank was like, "Listen, we'll do this, but you gotta put a real septic system in." And so we have a very nice septic system. And then yeah, I visited it once more when you bestowed some of your timbers and Kez supplies on me.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
picked
yeah.
it up at your storage unit and drove up there to visit a friend with Lauren on Thanksgiving of 2022, and that's when we saw it again. So uh, I'm very, very, very looking forward to finally moving in this summer. Yeah, I mean, for like people that are listening to this, like it's so crazy, sort of wandering and not settling down for so long and working on all these jobs for so long and being away and having like this stuff waiting in the wings. Like this house is we have this house. We've been paying the mortgage for a year and a half, uh, and kind of trying to finish. It's mostly my fault because I took on all these jobs during COVID, and I'm finally like about to finish them. So that's exciting. That's a long answer to yes. We're moving to Maine as soon as I'm done here in Missouri.
Yeah. And so organizing the first annual Maine Japanese Woodworking Festival and hosting it at your house in Maine became possible. I mean, obviously, once you purchased that property, but was it even a thought back then? When did you start thinking about um, picking up where I left off? I used to do the New York Kes, we did for, I say we, Margaret, my partner, Margaret Spring, and I, with the support of so many. But we did, yeah, six events, including one that was a national event, with Kizurokai USA, and you attended a few, and it's sometime last year, a year ago, in the spring of 2022, that you and I were on the phone, and I mentioned, I said, yeah, it's true. I'm moving to Oregon, and you mentioned, well, so what's gonna happen with that New York Kes? And I said, well,
Yeah,
I don't think I'll be organizing that from out west. It's one of the things I'm quite sad and thorn about, you know, leaving here. And before I could quite finish lamenting about uh, not being able to provide that anymore, you chimed in and asked, um, "How did you? Do you remember how you asked that?"
yeah. I think I said something like, "Well, if you ever like want to have somebody else do it, I'll glad to throw my hat in the ring." I remember saying "hat in the ring."
Yes, yes.
Um,
I remember it was very enthusiastic and so respectful at the same time. And
well, yeah. I mean, now that we've been talking and organizing it together for so long, I mean, it's probably quite clear that I may have had a seed in my head when I asked you. Like, uh, I guess I can summarize the whole thing. Like the idea of what I want to do with this property predates Kez and woodworking. And I mean, I think in my head, I always had this vision of like a big property where like a lot of stuff was going on and like I could really like build whatever I wanted and kind of do whatever I wanted, be creative. And we used to call it the compound. My friends and I, we would talk about, oh, we gotta start the compound, and like everybody can live there, and they can do whatever they want, and it's kind of like thing you joke about with friends. But like I said, I don't really joke about stuff like that. And I knew like, okay, like I really like to do stuff myself. I'm very like self-reliant. So it's like I want to have a garden and chickens and to build buildings and a shop and all this stuff. And you need a big property to do that. And once we had this property and it was seemed like a real thing, and also having had such formative experiences at your events and that community, when you said you were leaving, I was just like, oh no, like that's a bummer, because like I like those events, but also wonder if maybe we could do this at the property. Like, why not? Like, and that's kind of,
oh, and
and yeah.
I was so thrilled. I had I had hoped something like that would happen. Um, and but I was not about to ask somebody,
Hmm.
knowing how much work it is. Um, the right person had to come forward. I mean, nobody
Hmm.
had to ask me permission. Um, but if somebody wanted to use what I had built and take it on and keep going, um, I wanted to make sure that it was somebody not joking around,
Yeah.
not just talking, but somebody who would be like, "Yep, I want to do this," and I could trust and believe that they would do it. And as soon as you and I were talking, I'm like, "That's the guy." And every time we've talked since, especially since we started organizing, together, and um, every time we talk, the first thing I say to Margaret, my partner, after we hang up is like, that's the guy. I feel
Uh,
so good about this. That's the guy. Um, yeah,
Thanks, Jan. Well,
there.
it's so funny. Like since you do very you basically do the same kind of work, the same industry. We're selling to clients. There's those types of interactions. Like our personalities are much more focused on the building and stuff like that. And I find it very hard to convey to people in those early conversations that like whatever you want, we can make happen. It's really just a question of like time and money, like and that perseverance, which is what I think maybe you're talking about here, like with the KEDS thing, it's just like it's not a question of like if or can it happen. It's just like we just got stuff to do and we just got to make it happen. So I'm glad that that came through, at least in this aspect, because I always find it difficult to until people work with me and they kind of see that I'm half crazy, but also like I will make this stuff happen even if it kills me. Uh,
Yeah,
so it's been good for planning this. Um,
yeah.
and the response. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, no. I was, essentially acquiescing to like, yeah, yeah. That is what I saw. That is what I thought, and it's turning out to be true. So, I'm, yeah, 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 yeah. I feel really good about it.
Yeah, I was so excited when we finally opened up registration because I did not think there would be such a good response because the place is pretty remote and I'm kind of new to the scene and like I sort of taken the reins from you know like your event in New York was such a big thing and everybody knew about it. I was like, if 20 people come to Maine for this thing the first year, I'll consider that a success. Like, it'll be great. Everybody I've ever talked to in this community is awesome. And we always have a good time at these events. 20 people would be awesome. And like, it just like was crazy. I mean, so quickly we hit 20 and 30 and 40. And I gave the option to camp because we have plenty of space, thinking like, a couple young kids will camp, they like tents. And it's like over 50% of people are camping. So it sort of became quickly bigger, and people are excited about it, which makes me super excited. Um, I love throwing a good party, and it's going to be so much of a kind of that festival experience that I was hoping to have at the property. So it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, yeah. It's fantastic. As the event is shaping up, I really could not ask for anything better. For a few years, for a few years, Margaret and I had been toying with the idea of changing the character a little bit, making it a little bit more of a festival. That this word kept coming back, um, and opening the possibility to camping. This, I think, is one of the major factor that makes it switch character a little bit. Um, yeah, and I think it's fantastic. And a hesitation you and I had about the remoteness of the event. After being centrally located in New York for the beginning years, it's such a huge pool of people there. Um, and after teaching in the New York area for several years and sort of knowing the community there and how well the event was received, um, I I did have a tiny bit of hesitation moving it 6+ hours northeast of that area. uh, and then the more we organize and put details together, um, the more it felt like it was going to be something in like a festival with that nature, but also a slight undercurrent of pilgrimage.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
distance will not make it impossible for people to go. It will just make it more of a pilgrimage. And if you can't make it every year, it will be every year. So maybe you skip a year and you come another year. But it will be there together. Um, and
Well, it will only get more pleasant as the years go by. If my wife has anything to say about it, um, I have so many plans for the property, you know, that this first one is going to be a very DIY, very, that's what I'm so happy that the people and we just like, it's not hard. You get a bunch of people together and we talk about woodworking for a whole weekend, do a bunch of stuff. It's totally cool. But it's an old house. It's rough around the edges. It needs a bunch of work. So I'm hoping it's a little self-serving because having this thing every year kind of motivates me to be like, well, I better fix some stuff around the house. Like if people come back, they're going to be like, what have you been doing for a year? Type of thing. Um,
oh,
it's going to
totally,
be, yeah. And yeah, it'll be great. Very much
totally,
looking
yeah,
forward to it.
yeah. Before leaving Port Jervis, we had far fewer acres than you have, but that had been the plan too. Yeah, yeah. Be able to host larger events, build a shop, build other buildings. Yeah, 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 yeah. I can see it clearly. Yeah. Oh, maybe in closing, um, something that often ties our whole life together, regardless of how many professions, jobs, relationships we've had, um, are some of our favorite joys. And that takes as many shapes as there are people. Um, and if you could speak to one of your joys being on this
Hmm.
planet at this time in history.
Oh boy. So to speak, you talk about that unifying thread, regardless of sort of what we're doing. The joy in that, I mean, obviously the company, never stop building. The kernel there is like, I love kind of coming up with my own sort of solutions to problems. I mean, all the stuff I've ever done is kind of engineering in one way or the other. And I think a lot of engineers, what drives them is like a problem solving, like how can I uh, make these two pieces of wood go together in a unique way, or how can it be functional and aesthetic, or what if I want to tweak something, or and working through that problem solving process and starting with it's just kind of in my head, and then it manifests itself physically, and when you see it in physical form, I mean, that's a great and rewarding joy. That arc, I suppose, is what drives me to keep doing all the building stuff when it's sort of a non-traditional path, I guess you could say. um, And I guess to speak to what you were saying about this specific time in history, or like on this earth, in relation to that, um, we have access to so much information and technology that we can kind of create our own. I mean, it's like very easy to make solutions. You have a lot of, I guess, paints on your palette, and I find it very rewarding to kind of draw from different disciplines in the problem solving aspect of the work I do. So, and I don't really I try not like to discriminate for reasons that don't have anything to do with solving the problem. Like I made a handhold for some furniture by 3D printing a jig for my router. And that's like a new technology to make an interesting shape repeat many times. Or, there's aspects of my previous careers in different parts of the work. And so it's, it's, I just like doing that type of stuff. I mean, it's anything related to that whole experience is very rewarding. It's not just about producing the end result work. There's processes along with it. Uh, anything mechanical, anything building related, anything like that is just gets my juices flowing. Um, I know when you briefed me that this question might come up, I was trying to think of things that were like unrelated to work because uh, I do a lot. I do work a lot, and I that might be common in people in this type of creative field where it's like the thing you love to do and the thing that's you sort of do for work are kind of one and the same. So, you know, like what else brings you joy? I mean, it's like I like hanging out with my family and my wife and my friends, but like it's kind of otherwise it's I don't know, I just want to be in the shop and making stuff and seeing things manifest in reality. And but yeah, like after I'm done with a project, having like a hamburger, I mean that's just like the best hamburger you'll ever eat in the world. When you're done, and and the check's in the bank, and you're like, I can afford to. I'm just gonna have a beer and a hamburger. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So is that on your checklist? Is that the last item?
No, it's crazy. My
Pickup check,
checklist.
deposit check, drive to the burger joint.
I'm not even there yet. The top thing on my checklist is like get in the truck and drive away. I'll like worry about that when I get to Maine. I think but see now the festival is sort of part of the same arc because as soon as I'm done here, where hopefully that will be at the end of May, I'm basically packing up, moving all my stuff in 2 trips to Maine and starting to clean the place and prep for the festival. So I feel like it's the burger doesn't come until like a couple days after the festival. I think that's probably when I will collapse on the floor and be like, I need to take a little break for a little bit.
Well, we're lining up volunteers for the festival, and we'll make sure that you're still able to take care of your family after the festival. It would be it would be a very bitter taste to head home after the festival knowing that I wonder how he's doing back there now. That
oh,
last hour he didn't look so good.
oh no, the people that like the mood that we have in this conversation is good, and I mean the people that know me through this whole winter I mean, when I'm done with this project, I was just going to be floating across the ground. So like everything related to the festival and the move and toiling in the hot summer, moving heavy iron tools, because woodworkers feel like they need to move, 10 trillion pounds of stuff across the country constantly. I'm so looking forward to that. I'll be completely on in heaven to finish here and go back with my family. So yeah, it's not none of this. None of that is work. Cleaning up all the bug debris in the barn carriage house. No, that's not work at all. After this,
Yeah. Yeah, after an epic project, it's sort of a reward.
yeah,
You get to work on your own stuff.
I know it's crazy. It's been a long time. I keep joking with my wife. I'm like, you're the client now, and
Wise man.
yeah, I don't mind working for free for that client.
No. Well, that's been great. We could go on and on. There will be many more conversations on related topics. I'm hoping now people have a good understanding of Jason Fox. Jason Fox in a nutshell. Um, no, I'm sure we've only scratched the surface, but it's a good introduction.
Yeah, great talking to you. Lots more to discuss for sure.
Yes, yes, indeed. So stay tuned. Next week, I don't think next week, but I'll cut that. No, it was part of the. Oh, but I'll finish and then stop recording. Um, so thank you so much, Jason. This was wonderful. And let's stay in touch and see you this summer at the festival.
Sounds good. Can't wait to see everybody. Thanks for having me.